Today we're going to do something really special. We're going to make the famous Riverstone Kitchen hot cross buns that we make every year and people go just crazy over. Now the reason they go crazy over is because these are hot cross buns made from the heart, and they're made with love, and they're made with flavour, which is what Riverstone is all about. So hot cross buns are not all the same. The ones sometimes you get in the supermarkets are just poor imitations of the real thing. Real hot cross buns should be full of fruit, should have lots of spice, and they should have a nice chewy texture, dense but also lovely and light, and that's exactly what these things are, and that's why people come back for them year after year, and we've got people asking from all over the place for the recipe, so here it is. Let's get into it. Okay, so we've got our 1 kilo of flour. We've got a wee mixer. If you've got a small mixer, you can just cut this recipe down by 1/3 and it will work equally well. And if you don't have a mixing machine, you can mix this all together on your bench or a board. It takes a lot more effort, but you can still achieve the same thing. Right, in she goes. Now, if you've got a favorite flour, not all flours are the same, so go with the best quality standard flour you can find. Cup measurement. So, sultanas or raisins. Here we go, we're gonna go a nice cup. It doesn't matter if it's slightly over. Cool. Here you go, currants. That's half a cup of that. Sorry, I missed out the mixed peel. 3/4 of a cup. This is lovely fresh peel. It's lovely and moist. Got a delicious flavour. Wow. Okay, cinnamon. 1.5 teaspoons. And it doesn't really matter if these are a little bit high. Mixed spice. 1.5. Got our cloves. I'm gonna go 1 of that. Allspice, 1 of that. I like allspice. And a little bit of nutmeg. And you can use fresh nutmeg and just grate it in, roughly about 1/2 teaspoon. And she goes. So about 12 grams of yeast, which is 3 level teaspoons. So in we go. And I'm using a little bit of Himalayan pink salt here, and 25 grams of that is 3 teaspoons of this. And I got 3 tablespoons of olive oil. This is just tinned olive oil, not the super good stuff. Right, in this I just need to get 650 mils of just tepid water or even cold water, and we're going to pop that in there and bring that together. It's 250, it's 500. Cool. And up she comes. And just start it out on the slowest speed possible. And just right from the start you can see all that water getting absorbed into that mixture. And that's looking really good. It's a little bit dry at the bottom, but the top is still nice and moist. And as it mixes through, that's going to take all that flour up. Now I'm just going to stop this for a moment. Here we go. So right now, you can see that beautiful fruit just all coming through there. It's a lovely ratio. There's quite a lot of fruit there. And you can see that the dough's quite moist and quite sticky. And as this works together in this 10 minutes that we're going to be mixing it, it's going to get smoother, and that's what you want. You want a lovely smooth dough, and it won't be sticky at all. So that's just going to be a part of the process. And again, you could be doing this on the bench, no problem at all. Okay, so we'll just let this tick away for another 7 to 8 minutes and we'll be looking good. In the meantime, I've got a baking tray ready to go, and I'm just using some chlorine-free baking paper. And you can see this dough is starting to actually rise up. Just turn that off. Starting to rise up around the dough hook, and that's absolutely fine as long as it doesn't go up into it. We're good. There we go. Okay, so here she is. We're just going to pull that out. Okay, so here we are. So we've got this dough, and it's just not sticky. Like, it's just lovely and soft, it's still nice and cool. It hasn't got too hot from mixing. So we're going to pop it into a bowl and we're going to do a bulk proof, which means basically just rise by itself in a nice warm place for about 2 hours. Depending on the temperature of the day is probably the biggest thing that's going to affect it, or the temperature of your house. If it's quite cool, you want to put it somewhere quite warm. So it could be in a hot water cupboard just on top. You just don't want it sitting where there's any direct heat. You don't want to heat it up too much. It just wants to be in a nice warm environment. In the kitchen at the restaurant, we'll put it up high on top of ovens on a cool day. At home, I'll put it somewhere like in a sunny window. Got my bowl, bit of olive oil, and this is just going to stop the dough from sticking, not too much. While it's not sticky now, once that rises up, we don't want to destroy the structure of it by tearing it. So in she goes, just put a little bit of olive oil on top, and then I just want to get a piece of Glad wrap or plastic cling film and put that over top. And I find that better than a tea towel because it seals your dough inside, keeps it nice and moist, and whatever heat is generated in there, it's like a little microclimate, and that's really going to help your dough rise as fast as possible. It's in autumn, so I'm just going to pop it down there by the window. And 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you just really want to see that dough rise and at least double in size. Okay, so it's been about 2.25 hours and this has come up beautifully. Look at that. I'll just take that off. Just been keeping an eye on it, and it was fine just to sit there for the entire time in the window. It's definitely warmed up a wee bit, but look at that. It's got, you can see just a beautiful wobble. And what you want to do with all doughs is catch it on the rise. You don't want it to overprove and then shape it, and you don't want it underproved. You want it on the rise as the yeast and the rising agents are really starting to kick in, and that's what is going to give you a beautiful, lovely, fluffy loaf or whatever kind of dough you're working with. You can see just how gorgeous that is. And now we're going to shape this up. I always just chuck a wee plate on. I wash the plate. I don't feel like washing scales all the time. And we're going to use this dough scraper, and we're just going to put these into 130 grams, 4 grams over. It's pretty close. Yep, bang on. And you don't have to use scales. You can just divide it into equal parts. Oh, I can't wait. The smell is incredible. I think that's one of the things, just the beautiful spices that come through that just draw people back to these hot cross buns. So what do we get there? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's not exactly a baker's dozen, but I'm gonna totally find room in my tummy for these later on. So we're just going to shape these up. And what I'm going to do is just make a bit of a cage with my hand, and the easiest way I can describe is I'm going to go in a circular motion, and I'm not going to put too much flour on the bench. I'm going to see what the dough needs first, no pun intended. So I'm going to work the dough. If I find it needs a bit of flour to give it a bit of texture, then I will. If I don't, I won't. But that's actually looking pretty good. Look at that. So sometimes there's the consistency of the dough has enough flour in it already, and I don't need it. If it's overproved, it can actually get a bit wet, and that's when you just need to redust the flour, but this is great. So I'm just making a cage with my fingers, nice and wide, and then I'm putting a bit of downward pressure. And I'm just letting it roll around my fingers. And even just doing it in slow motion is bring it together. But I just need a little bit of downward motion just to get this to seal over. So it's a mixture of downward pressure and circular motion. Cool. You might get a little bit of fruit that pops out on top. That's absolutely fine. Getting this down pat is just all about practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets. If you get really good, you can start doing 2 hands. I always find that my right hand is more practice because I do it with my right hand more often, and my left one needs a bit of work. Here's my tray. These are going to be absolutely beauties. Just a little bit of a gap between them because these are going to rise. So there we go, we've got 16 rolls, perfect. And now I'm going to cover them and put them back into a warm place. And they might take maybe another hour to come up. I'll just keep an eye on them. I want them to really rise, really swell up, and I want them to kind of max out the most that I think that they can rise before I put them into a hot oven. Okay, so here we go, got a tea towel. Now I can just put that on like that, but another little trick is just to have a damp tea towel, because as these rise up, when they get super proved, they can stick to the tea towel, and that's really annoying when you've got a beautifully risen dough and you go to take the tea towel off and somewhere it's stuck. So I'm just going to give it a quick dip. Not crazy wet, you want to make sure it's well wrung out. Over top and into a warm place. Cool. Okay, so it's been about an hour and a half. It's a moderately sunny day here, and I can tell by the way the tea towel is looking, they look nice and plump, so let's have a wee look. Oh wow, it is about as good as you want to get it. Look at that, they are just lovely, plump. There's a real definite rise, and when you feel it, just give it a slight squeeze. There's a bit of a give, but not too much. And they're certainly not going to deflate just by gently touching them. They look absolutely perfect. They're really high, they're really lush, and they're about the shape that we want. I've turned my oven up to 250 degrees. I've got it on a grill fan bake, so it's like the hottest top and bottom heat I can do in my oven. That's nice and hot. Now all we have to do is do the fun part and make the crosses. So I've got half a cup of water. So I'm going to add about roughly equal parts, and I want to make like a slurry. And I want it to be quite thick, and I want to have a little bit more than I need, because the last thing you want to do is run out. So I'm just going to need a little bit more. It's kind of like making paper mache, but one you can eat. So it's quite thick. Get it really stirred in. Give it a good firm mix to really get that flour and water combined. That's looking good. So in order to be able to pipe our crosses on, we're going to need a sheet of paper. We'll just move this out of the way. And this is just baking paper that's been cut into a large triangle. And so it's a rectangle, cut it in half, and then the longest edge of the triangle, you want to put your finger in the middle, grab the end furthest away from you. That's the easiest way I can remember. Bring it in, twist it, and then it makes a basic cone shape. Just hold it down the bottom if you need to, twist it around, and there you go, you've got a basic cone. You want it to be basically closed at the bottom, and you can make it closed by just twisting it open. There, it's really, really nice and sharp. You're just going to pour that in on the top, and as it fills up, it's going to become more easier to hold. Just going to grab that last little bit, just in case we need it all. Okay, now this is the tricky part. You want to fold over the top to keep it captured in. And you just got to make sure it doesn't all fall apart on you. So I'm twisting this in on itself, and now we've got a nice secure bag. And I'll just get a pair of scissors and I'll cut the end off. I like nice big thick crosses, so I'm going to cut a decent piece off. And you can just work from one end. And there we go, nice big hot cross buns. Into the oven they go, 15 minutes. Okay, so one little trick we can do with our hot cross buns once they're in the oven to help them get an extra oven spring is we're going to introduce a little bit of water. So there's going to be steam coming out of those buns as they expand, but to help them really jump, we're just going to put a little bit of water. Now you can do two things. You can put this in a little steel tray and pop that in there to add extra moisture. If you don't have exposed elements in your oven, like in my one, I can just throw a little bit of water in. Obviously you don't want to throw water onto an element, but I can just throw this onto the side of my oven, onto the walls, and that's going to turn instantly to steam. It's going to help those buns really jump. So just a quarter cup of water. And once you bang that into the oven, it could be ice cubes, you could put like 4 or 5 ice cubes. Once that's in, keep that door shut because you want that steam to stay in there during the baking process. And now all we're going to do now is make a little glaze of sugar and water. We're just going to chuck in half a cup of water into a saucepan and half a cup of sugar. And we're literally just going to bring that to the boil. Give it about a minute once it comes to the boil. So it's been 20 minutes in total. I've had a wee bo peep at the hot cross buns after 15 minutes. Just needed another few minutes to go. If they're lovely and golden brown and they've jumped up nice and high and it's not quite 20 minutes in your oven, that's fine, bring them on out. You don't want them too dark. I'll show you where we're at. Ooh. Fantastic. And here we go. The final finished product. Lovely and golden brown, a little bit darker here at the back. I had mine on fan grill, which is like the hottest. I've got my sugar glaze ready to go, and we're just going to brush that on. Beautiful, you can hear that sizzling. And I'm just going to absorb into that. Fantastic. Now these ones that look quite dark at the back, by the time you get the glaze on, they're just going to lighten up, so don't freak out too much. If anything, they all go a little bit lighter. And then I just go back, and what I like to do is give them a second glaze, because the first one absorbs in, and then the second one makes it super nice and shiny. Now we just need this to cool down, and we can take them out and we can rip into them. So there you have it, look at these bad boys. 16 gloriously glazed, bursting with fruit, flavour bomb Easter buns. Make a heap, pop some in the freezer, toast them up, make bread and butter pudding. These babies will see you right.